You're listening to the Footy First podcast on TSN 1050. Champions live here.
That's right, folks. Another Saturday means one thing and one thing only here on TSN 1050. It is time for Footy First. I'm Nick McVicar, holding down the fort solo again. Niko's got another preseason match to get to, but I know he's listening, so I'm going to try to do him, I'm going to try to give him as much as I can in the hour that I have. We got a lot to get into this week. Got MLS action. Of course we have MLS action. 3 Canadian teams will be in action today. First Canadian derby. This is going to be fun. Last week, TFC, Vancouver, both picked up draws. I'll break those down in just a little bit. But why don't we start in the best place possible right now for Canada soccer? The men's team clinching a semifinal berth in the Nations League. Yes, I know. Cheering, great, love it. It was 2 impressive performances this past weekend. We had a 2-0 victory over Curacao. And then, of course, on Tuesday, at home at BMO Field, 4-1 victory over Honduras. In a match that they utterly dominated from start to finish. Honduras was not in that match at all. And it showed really, really early. But I want to start with the Curacao match, obviously. Let's go chronologically here. And it was, again, a dominant performance, but it wasn't Canada at their best. We saw some flashes. Kone looked very good, and he looked even better against Honduras. We'll get into that in a second. But if you look at the stats, it wasn't even a close game. Like 2-0 almost doesn't do service to how good Canada played in this match without being at their best. 62.3% possession. 7 shots, 4 on target. Nearly 85% passing accuracy at 84.9. It was a very, very strong performance from Les Rouges. And you look at what that meant for the Honduras match. A lot of confidence going in. Kyle Larin is playing out of his mind. The only negative I can really find in that first match, if there was one, and I'm really reaching here, was the 2 yellow cards. Steven Vittoria picked up 1. And then, of course, Richie Larea picked up the early one in what I would call a rather silly yellow card. But it led to Curacao being down a man in the first 30 minutes of the match because he got a corresponding yellow with one of their players, and that player then went and did a horrendous tackle. And I don't know if horrendous is even a fair enough word. It was a bad tackle that deserved a yellow card. So then Canada goes up a man, and pretty much just locks it down. The field was really, really bad, very CONCACAF-esque. The ball looked like it was bouncing on concrete for the most part. But Canada did what they needed to do, and that's something that we haven't been able to say consistently throughout the history of Canada soccer. Most of the time, these matches were the ones that would get away. But instead, John Herdman and the team have put together a really, really strong lineup, a really, really strong game plan, and instead we end up with a 2-0 victory as opposed to a draw or a loss in this match. And then, the pièce de résistance of the week. Canada at home against a good Honduran side. They're not a great side. They're not at the level of the U.S. and Mexico. But Honduras is one of the better teams in CONCACAF. They always play Canada really well. Yes, flashes back to the 8-1 loss years ago. And Canada came into this match saying, okay, we got to put that behind us. We got to put everything that's happened with this team behind us. And boy, did they ever. This match, if the Curacao match was dominant, this match was otherworldly. They improved on their possession stats, having 64.8% of the possession. 2 early goals from Kyle Larin in the first 12 minutes of the match. He came out flying. looked like one of the best players on the pitch. And he's grown into a player who can be not only trusted by John Herdman, but is expected to score. And that may sound weird because he is the all-time Canadian leader in goals at the international level. But there was always this kind of underlying thing that he wasn't the true number one striker that he wanted to be. And yet, over the last few years, we've seen him blossom into the perfect striker for this Canadian system alongside his partner, Jonathan David. And you could talk about what that means for the club. You can talk about what that means for Canada as a whole. But John Herdman, I think, put it best when asked about what Kyle Larin going back to Spain, playing for Real Valladolid, and they have a big upcoming match against Barca. And this is what he had to say about Kyle Larin's mindset heading into that match.
Well, he's going to go in on a high. I know that for sure. I think when you look at Kyle, when he came into that World Cup, he'd had like 100 minutes in 4 months. I mean, that's not Kyle Larin. It wasn't the Kyle Larin we've seen going through World Cup qualification. You know, we had a number of players that were at a World Cup at that sort of, what I would say, out of real match rhythm, out of that real Tier 1 edge rhythm. But he's at that now. He's in a Tier 1 league scoring goals. And he came into this camp like as fit as I've seen him. And it's, you see it in his pressing intensity. His numbers in the first game were through the roof. His numbers again tonight, his pressing was right there. And I feel like when you have him and Johnny at that sort of physical capacity, we got a real hard working front two in CONCACAF. And then when we regain high, transitionally, I mean, there are not many teams can live with us. So I think the Kyle Larin we're seeing now is, you know, a guy that could help us win a Nations League final.
It's pretty positive notes from the coach, and he mentioned the duo of Larin and Jonathan David and how impressive they have been. Tiba Hutchinson also spoke post-match after that Honduras match, and he had this to say about the two young strikers' maturity levels growing over the years.
They keep getting better and better. You know, every time they put on the jersey and go out there and, you know, represent Canada, their link, their connection together gets stronger. You can see they're just having fun playing off of each other. It's a great, striking force. So it adds a lot to our team, gives us a different dynamic, and the more they play together, the better they're going to get. So it's great. It's great to see them doing what they're doing in their clubs, and when they can come here and do the same for this national team, it's amazing. So these are the type of profiles that we've needed to be playing for our country.
It's true. This is what we've been lacking for a very long time. Pretty much since Dwayne De Rosario stopped playing for the national program, we haven't had a true top striker. And now we have two of them. And they play really well off of each other. You add in Tejan up one wing and Davies down the other wing. It's a dangerous attacking group. And one that is very, very flexible. It's something that we as fans need to just take in and enjoy every minute of it. Because, to be honest, you don't get to see attacking duos like this very often. And yes, people are going to point to Kyle Larin getting the penalty shot and missing. And after the match, John Herdman was asked if he could promise the media that Jonathan David would take the next penalty. And here's what he had to say.
I can't promise you anything. I wish I could. I wish I could.
Are you going to name a designated penalty taker, or is it just going to stay?
There's a named designated penalty taker. His name is Jonathan David. But he gave the ball to Kyle Larin, his teammate, to help him have a hat-trick tonight. The form Kyle's been in, would you expect him to score from 12 yards? You would. And I don't blame Kyle for taking that. I mean, I'm looking on the sideline with one eye going, go on, Johnny, take it. But at the same time, go on, give it to Kyle. Two goal scorers in form. But Johnny is there. He's the penalty taker. And if Johnny decides to give the ball to someone, I can live with that. The last time he did, it didn't turn out. But tonight didn't turn out again. I think in a Nations League final, there's no messing around. There's one man that's going to take that penalty at that time, hat-tricks or no hat-tricks.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment by John Herdman. And you know what? As soon as Canada won that penalty, I knew who was taking it. Everyone knew who was taking it. And I think anyone who knows Kyle Larin and his penalty kick-taking prowess is probably thinking the same thing, that it might not go in. But you're up 2-0. You're just about to get into halftime. Do you blame Jonathan David for giving Kyle Larin a chance to get his hat trick in the first half? Do you know who else got a hat trick in the first half of their game on Saturday? The only other player, Lionel Messi. Yeah, Messi. He's the only other person to get a hat trick in the first half of a game this weekend. So, yeah. Let him give it a shot. They were dominating the game. If this was a 0-0 match in the 85th minute, more questions would be asked. Just like they were asked at the World Cup when Davies took the kick. But Jonathan David gave it to Larin to get the hat trick. Anyone who is upset about this needs to take a deep breath and realize the situation, realize the moment, realize what was going on. Because no one else was taking that kick other than Kyle Larin. And if you think that they should have, you have not been part of a team and you do not understand the game very well, because that's just how it is in a team. It's how it should be too. Let's get back to some more positive stuff, and I want to talk about the defense in this match against Honduras. And I know I'm harping a lot on this Honduras match, but it was one of the best performances I've seen from the Canadian national team in years. And the defensive three really, really stood out for me. Johnston, Kennedy, and Cornelius had a fantastic match prior to Kennedy getting hurt. Every time Honduras got anywhere close to the Canadian defensive third, they were turned away. The three of them were everywhere. And it helped that the midfield were tracking back properly, but for the most part, it was just these three that were doing all the clearance. They were able to force the ball wide. They were able to force Honduras to just give up the ball. And when they were really on, they forced Honduras to go all the way back to their defensive line. It was a truly professional and impressive performance from those three. And a lot of people were worried about Kennedy and Cornelius being in there because they're not the normal guys we see back there. Kamal Miller obviously out hurt. Steven Vittoria missed this match. But it was a very, very thoroughly impressive performance from a back three that could become the norm moving forward. Kennedy looked fantastic in both matches. Cornelius really stepped up. And it was Kennedy's injury that we got to see a debut from Hybert. And he looked good after he came on. Of course, right after he came on was the corner and that Honduras scored in, but you can't really blame him because it was a corner. After that, he looked great. The defense was solid all the way around. I was thoroughly impressed by that. I was a little disappointed Kennedy got hurt because we missed the debut of potentially Lotori, who was warming up. Looked like he was ready to come in, but as soon as Kennedy went down, they had to change the game plan up a little bit. But we almost got treated to a Lotori debut. Another CPL grad trying to join the likes of Joel Waterman. And the more I watched that game back, because I did, I was there live, and then I watched it back just to make sure my eyes didn't deceive me. The defense was thoroughly impressive, but not as impressive as one Ishmael Kone. I mentioned earlier he had a great match against Curacao. His match against Honduras was clinical. And John Herdman, he was his biggest supporter afterwards. He had this to say about his performance against Honduras.
Yeah, and it was a really impressive performance, I think, from Isma. It's probably one of the best midfield performances I've ever seen in the time I've been here. I mean, that sort of level was up there with Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies, Tejan Buchanan, Kyle Larin. I mean, Eustachios, Ozos, they were all high-level performances, but I thought his was special tonight. That was a real breakout performance for Canada. I thought in the Curaçao match he was very disciplined, professional, but I thought tonight he just turned it up a notch and enjoyed his football.
Those are strong words from the coach. One of the best midfield performances he's seen since he's been here. And it was. Everything he did offensively was strong. Great passing, good ball movement, positionally was where he needed to be on every attack. It was impressive. And then you add in his defensive game, and it was just as impressive. He didn't allow any easy from the Hondurans. He forced everything away. He made everything look simple. And with a little bit of rotation, because Atiba wasn't in, it was a very, very impressive performance from Kone, who also got the praise of the aforementioned Atiba. When he was asked about what Kone's ceiling was, this is what he had to say.
Very, very high for him. Young player with, so much potential. He plays with a lot of maturity. You can see that not a lot phases him. He's out there playing like he's playing in his backyard. And that's great to see in footballers just expressing themselves out there. So I think he's got, a great career ahead of him. I'm happy that I get to witness some of it, being his teammate. And not only is he a really good footballer, but he's a great kid. So, looking forward to seeing, how far he can go.
It was a great performance, well deserving of the praise from his captain. And all of this together means that Canada has now clinched their spot in the Nations League semifinals in Vegas this summer. And it's a huge moment. It's a huge opportunity for this team to potentially raise a trophy. And I think John Herdman had a pretty telling thing post-match saying, this is what we need. This is what we've been waiting for. We've been fighting for to get to this level and for the opportunities to win trophies. This is the type of games that they need to play. And he's right. This is the type of games that they need to play. They need to play high-pressure games where there's something on the line, where there's a trophy on the line. So it's impressive to see from the Canadians. Before we go to break, I want to just talk about Atiba, because Atiba did make his appearance in the Honduras match, and he did against Curaçao as well, was given the band as soon as he came on the pitch, as he should. But post-game, there were some comments that were made that I think surprised a lot of people. And first, he got to bang the drum for the first time, and he had one of the most heartfelt answers to being asked what that meant to him, and here's what he had to say.
It was cool. I always wanted to do that. It was nice. I was just trying not to lose my rhythm. But yeah, it was good. They kind of calling for me, so I was just happy to do that. The support that they've always given to us as a team, me myself, has been really great. So it was a cool moment.
And it was. He earned his 100th cap against Curaçao and got honored prior to the match for that as well. But it was the other comment that he made when he was asked what is next for him.
What's next? A couple more games. But yeah, I'm really close now to the end of it. It's been a great spell for me, a good career, I think, and I just want to finish off on a high note, finish off good. But yeah, this is not my announcement, but I'm just, kind of just letting you guys know that, yeah, I'm happy about the career that I've had with the national team, and just getting really close to the end of it.
I'll be honest, I was sitting in that press conference and I was shocked that that came out of his mouth the way he said it. But we all knew. We knew it was coming. It doesn't make it any easier. This is one of the greatest Canadian players to play. He might not have been the most skilled in any way, shape, or form, but he's still one of the greatest Canadians to touch a pitch on the men's side. And to hear him say something like that, it was a bit shocking for me sitting there. I don't know if everyone was as shocked. But, yeah, Atiba. Last few matches here coming up, so enjoy every minute of it, folks. We're going to take a break. On the other side, it's time to get into the MLS action, as we got 2 games that I'm going to break down and tee up the 2 games this weekend as well. Don't forget, you can text into the show 105050. Let us know what you think about the Canada soccer matches this past week and TFC and Vancouver's matches as well. You're listening to Footy First here on TSN 1050. Welcome back to Footy First here on TSN 1050. Nick McVicar holding it down. Niko in preseason action today. But don't worry, he did send me his predictions for the final segment, so we will have that. Because why not? But as I mentioned before the break, we're going to talk about the MLS games last week. Because we got 2 draws in Canadian action. TFC 0-0 with San Jose, while Vancouver finished 1-1 at Minnesota, a game that I was convinced was going to be a draw anyway. Ended up being a draw. But if you look at the numbers, if you watch the game, this is a game Vancouver should have had. They were the better squad. The whole time, they were the better squad. If you look at every single metric, if you look at every single minute of that game almost, they were the better team. 62.8% possession. They had 23 shots, 5 on target, as opposed to only giving up 8 shots and 2 on target for Minnesota. And I mentioned this before because I think it's a very important stat if you're looking at possession, because possession doesn't mean everything. But with almost 63% possession, they had 26 crosses in the match. 26. So not only were they controlling the ball, but they were moving into the attacking third. They were forcing the ball into the box. It was a dominant performance. If you look, I know it's a bit more of an advanced stat, but the expected goal numbers were very telling too. Vancouver had an expected goals of 2. Minnesota had an expected goals of 0.7. Not 1.7, 0.7. Vancouver was the better team, and they should have come out with the win in that match on the road. But here we are. They did not, and now they sit 1 point out of a playoff spot at the moment. They have 5 goals in 5 MLS matches this year. 5. Is that bad? No, it's not bad. In fact, it's mid-table in the West. And I mean, you can't really count St. Louis. Their 15 goals in 5 matches is an unreal number. And we'll have to break that down at some point when we have some time. Because they've been a great story. But Vancouver needs to do more. There's probably 2 matches in the MLS this season where they should have come out with a result, a positive result. This past weekend and the one before, they should have won those games. And instead, we're sitting here and they've tied them both. And Vancouver still does not have a victory on the season. This is a team that has some good pieces. There are some question marks, don't get me wrong, but there's some good pieces. They should not be 0-2-3 to start the year through 5. This is not where they need to be. So, if you're a Whitecaps fan, we're seeing the positive. There are some good moments. In fact, as I said, this whole match, I thought they were the better squad. But you got to learn how to close out games, and that's what they're not doing. They are not closing out games. They've taken leads in multiple games this year and ended up drawing and or losing, and that's unacceptable. You need to close out matches when you have the lead in the MLS. It is so important. When playoffs come down to 1 or 2 points at the end of the year, you can't be dropping them in the beginning of the season because you're just putting yourself in the hole. But build on the positive. Build on the play of the back line. Build on the play of the midfield. Because there's been a lot of good. Just got to learn how to hold those games. In the other MLS match from last weekend, TFC ended up 0-0 with San Jose. And again, this was a match that, if you look at it, wasn't a whole lot in it. About even on possession, 54-46 for TFC. Each team had 2 shots on goal. But there wasn't a whole lot in this match. It was a lot of feeling each other out, trying to find where the holes were and try to find the attacking ability. And they couldn't really force anything. TFC got more opportunities early out of their 15 shots. Most of them came in the first half. In fact, TFC didn't have a single shot on target or a single shot period after the 70th minute. That's when San Jose kind of took over and forced TFC back, and they had 7 shots in the last 20. Again, these are not horrific stats. But if you're trying to win a game, you can't be not getting a shot in the last 20 minutes. It's very similar to what I just said about Vancouver. If you want to win, you have to close out games. And instead of closing out this game and trying to go for the win or getting any attacking pressure at all, TFC looked like they just accepted the draw. And as a TFC supporter for most of my life, and now as someone who follows the team closely, thanks to the show, you look at it and there's so many reasons to be excited about this team. Bernardeschi has really come into his form here in Toronto. Looks like a absolute steal of a signing. The attacking 3 has been changed so consistently because of injury that he hasn't even really gotten fully comfortable with his teammates yet, and yet he's still producing at the rate that he is. You look at the back line and they look significantly better over the last few weeks. Looks like the duo of Hedges and Rusted have really come into their own, really are working well together. Petretta has looked better over the last couple of weeks. And obviously Richie and being away last week didn't help, but he's looked like he's fit in with those guys as well. So the defense is better. The midfield, it looks very strong this year. Bradley, Kay, Oso, Cervania. There's a lot of positives about this team. And yet, just like Vancouver, they're out of a playoff spot with only 1 win. There needs to be more consistency from the results. They're starting out well, they're getting ahead, but they're losing matches late. And just like Vancouver, you can't be losing matches late when you're trying to fight to get into a playoff spot. This isn't the EPL. This isn't European leagues where it just depends on regular season. This is a playoff structure. You need to finish in the playoff spots to show how good of a squad, to show how good of a club you are. And yet what we're seeing from TFC and Vancouver consistently is that they do not have the legs to go a full 90. The first 60, first 70, they can be dominant. They look dominant at most of the time. But then we get to the last 20 or 30 minutes and they pin their ears back and pretend like they're a lost puppy trying to fight for possession. It's not good. You need to find ways to finish out games. You need to find ways to control the game in the last 20, 30 minutes if you hope to be a playoff team. And right now, neither of them look like they are a playoff team or a playoff caliber team. They look like they're just on the outside looking in. And that's why they sit in the standings currently 10th and 11th respectively in their conferences. Now I could get into Montreal. They didn't play last week. They're getting their defenseman and Joel Waterman back. Romeo Kyoto, who had a not so impressive performance for Honduras against Canada. They'll be back in the fold this week when they take on Vancouver. And Montreal's in the worst spot out of the three teams, I believe, in my opinion. They only have 3 goals through 3 matches. Or 4 matches, I apologize. Don't know why I said 3. They've given up 7. They're last place in the Eastern Conference, and the scoring touch is just not there. It's not. Now, granted, they're 1-0-0 at home, so maybe they can make Stade Saputo a fortress for the rest of the season and pick up a bunch of points at home and maybe fight for a playoff spot that way. But they're 0-3 on the road right now. They haven't even gotten a point on the road. It does not look good for them. And I hope I'm wrong, because they have a lot of good young talent on that team. Got a lot of good young Canadian talent. I already mentioned Waterman. You can mention Sean Rea. Kamal Miller may not be the young Canadian talent, but he's a Canadian talent when he's healthy. He'll be a very important part for Montreal, but we don't know how long he's going to be out. So the questions are now arising to the point where are they going to find goals and how are they going to mesh defensively? So hopefully when they come back playing against Vancouver, it's going to be a tight match. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, I'm going to tee up these 2 MLS matches this week. TFC taking on Charlotte at home, and of course the Canadian matchup between Vancouver and Montreal. Once again, don't forget to text into the show at 105050 or follow us on Twitter at Footy First Show, and you can let us know what you think of the upcoming MLS matches as well. You're listening to Footy First here on TSN 1050. Welcome back to Footy First here on TSN 1050. Nick McVicar holding it down for you. Niko in preseason action today with his club, York United. But don't worry, folks, I got you. We've talked Canada soccer. We talked last week's MLS action. Let's get into this week's matches. And we got some good ones. I'll get into the All-Canadian matchup with Vancouver and Montreal in a sec because I want to get the TFC one out of the way so we can focus on the All-Canadian matchup. And TFC at home, they're going to be taking on Charlotte. And this is a good opportunity for TFC. I just said they've been playing a lot better as of late. They're looking a little bit stronger. They're getting a little bit more comfortable up front. They're going to get their 4 Canadian internationals back. Richie, Io, Olso, and Kay will all be returning to the squad. This is a good spot for them. They didn't dominate San Jose. They probably should have, but they didn't. But this Charlotte team is not playing well. I will say they've improved over the last 2 matches, picking up 4 points in their last 2. A win and a draw on the road. But this is a TFC team that needs to start putting together some results and not just draws. Because as good as draws are, they're not going to help you that much in the standings. You need to start picking up wins. And before the season, this is a TFC squad that I personally thought was going to be in a playoff spot. I thought they might be in the 4 to 6 range in the Eastern Conference. I thought they were going to be a good team. And they've shown flashes of it. There's been some positives. But as I just said in the last segment, they're not holding leads, and that's an issue. And when you're taking on a squad like Charlotte, who, for their last few matches have been picking up points, they're not scoring goals very often. They have 4 goals in 5 matches. They've given up 9. This is a team that is in a perfect spot for TFC to go into this match and take it to them. Force the play. Force Charlotte to make a mistake or break the Charlotte back line if you can't force them to make a mistake. This is the opportunity that they need to take and show how good of a squad they really are. Because Charlotte was not supposed to be good this year. They were supposed to be a bottom part of the Eastern Conference type of team. TFC was not. They were supposed to be a middle of the playoffs type of team. So we need to see more from this TFC squad. And the fact that there is 4 Canadians on the squad does help. It allows people who maybe aren't TFC fans to look at this and take positives out of it because we want to see the Canadians play well. And hopefully Io gets some time. We know Oso, Kay, and Richie are going to be most likely in the starting lineup. We need to see more from this squad. And we need to see them have a lot of success moving forward because they have the bodies to do so. If we don't see it soon, the question marks are going to be arising around head coach Bob Bradley. And I don't think they're warranted, but that's what happens in professional sport. If you do not get out to the start that you're expecting, and the fans believe that you're supposed to be doing better than you are, there will be questions asked, and most likely they will be asked of the head coach. Whether that's fair or not remains to be seen, but that's how it is in sports. So hopefully we can see a positive game from TFC this week. In the other matchup, we got the other 2 Canadian teams. Montreal heads out west. They will take on the Vancouver Whitecaps tonight in MLS action. And this is a game that both teams kind of need. Montreal picked up a win in their last match out. That was before the international break saw them not have a match last week. Vancouver still without a win. As I said, they utterly dominated their game last week and ended up with a 1-1 draw against Minnesota. They're going to be looking to continue that positive play against a Montreal side who I've mentioned don't score very often. Probably need to work on that. I expect this one to be a hard-fought match. This is going to be a tight game, and it could come down to one moment of brilliance from one of the attacking teams. And if that's the way it is, I would probably lean towards Vancouver, and we'll get into our predictions on the other side of the next break. But this is a game that I think both teams are going to come out trying to dominate, trying to control the pace of play, trying to force the other team to make a mistake, like I just said TFC needs to do against Charlotte. This is a game that both teams could potentially win depending on how they show up. And I know we could say that about a lot of matches in the MLS, that any team in any match can come out with the win. But this is truly the case today, where I think this game will come down to one single moment of brilliance from one of these 2 squads. Whether it be Vancouver or Montreal, that remains to be seen. I've been really impressed with Vancouver over their last few weeks. The CONCACAF League matches were fantastic. I think they're on the right track in the Champions League there. But the MLS showings just haven't duplicated that success, and we're going to need to see more from them if they're going to crawl themselves out of a basement spot in the Western Conference. We're going to take our last break here. On the other side, it is prediction time here on Footy First. And again, Niko did send me his predictions. I will go over how we did last week, and we'll get into the 2 matches this week. You're listening to Footy First here on TSN 1050. Welcome back to Footy First here on TSN 1050. Nick McVicar Going solo today as Niko is in preseason action. But it is our last segment of the show, which means one thing here on Footy First. It is time for our predictions. And folks, for the first time, I've had a very positive week in predictions. So did Niko, unfortunately. So I didn't make up any ground, but both of us went 3-1 last week. Nailed it! Thank you. Thank you, Barney. Appreciate that. Yeah, 3-1. I was very happy with how it went. We both picked up the same 3 games, of course. We had the draw in the Vancouver game and then the 2 Canada wins. Only game that neither of us got was the TFC match, as we had winners and it ended in a draw. But positive week nonetheless. If we look at the totals before we get into our picks this week, I'm now sitting at 6-11. Niko, very, very impressive, 10-7. I got to make up some ground here. And let's see how we do. 2 matches. I've already talked about them. It's TFC hosting Charlotte, Vancouver hosting Montreal. And let's get right to Niko's picks. Here's what he had to say this morning. He sent me the video, and here's his picks.
Trying to figure out how I'm holding my phone. Shouldn't be this difficult. But my predictions for this week, simple week, only 2 games. First game, Toronto, Charlotte. It's at home, BMO Field. All the Canada boys are back in the squad. I think it's going to be a convincing win for TFC. So I got them taking that one. And then our game of the week, Vancouver hosting Montreal. Montreal had the week off. Vancouver's doing better than Montreal. Tough one. But I'm going to go Joel Waterman back in BC. Let's go with the Montreal first win of the season. We'll give it to them. I think the game is going to be 2-1. And those are my predictions. Let's see if Nick can catch up.
Well, thanks, Niko. Yeah, and I'm going to agree with him on the TFC match. I do like TFC in this one, and they are the favorites for a reason going into this match. If you are a betting fan, you can get them at -105 on FanDuel to win this match. And that's probably right. They're the better squad in this game. They're at home. I see this one being a win. Maybe not as convincing as Niko is saying, but I could see a 1-0, 2-0 victory here. In the Vancouver-Montreal game, I'm going to go the other way. I like his scoreline of 2-1, but I like Vancouver at home in this match. I think they're the better team right now, and the way they're playing would suggest that. So I'm going to go with the team that's playing better, and I'm also going to go with the team that, in my opinion, has the better goalkeeper in Takaoka. As Niko said last week, or texted me to say last week, he may be the best pure shot stopper in the league. So because of that, I'm going to go Vancouver. Listen, folks, if you want to follow me, you can double up on those picks on FanDuel Sportsbook app, and you can get them at +310. If you don't like Vancouver, if you want to go Montreal and follow Niko, get a little bit better odds at +505, as Montreal is the underdog in that game. But follow along. Maybe put some money down. See which one of us is going to come out with the victory. That'll do it for us here on Footy First. Don't forget to follow our socials at Footy First Show on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the YouTube channel as well, as we post all of our episodes and all of our interviews. And don't forget the prediction segment, so you can follow along there. Don't forget to like and subscribe there. You can get all the podcasts wherever you get your favorite podcasts, on Spotify, Apple, and everywhere else. We will see you next week. Niko will hopefully be back then. Thank you for listening. We'll see you then.